Hello, everybody, and welcome to Marine Mammal Monday. You are in the right spot if you're here to learn a little bit more about whales in the San Francisco Bay. So, if you're just joining us here, we're going to get started in a couple of minutes, but you are in the right spot for Marine Mammal Monday whales in San Francisco Bay. Now, if you are joining us, I always love to know where folks are tuning in from. So please feel free to share in the comments where you're tuning in from. If you've been to a Marine Mammal Monday before, things like that, I think are just really extra exciting for me. So thank you, everybody. Oh, and I'm already seeing some already. You know the trill. So thank you so much. So I'm seeing from Diane is tuning in from San Simeon, which is very exciting, visiting Petaluma and hoping to come to the Marine Mammal Center this week. Definitely stop by. We would love nothing more than to have you here on site. I have some folks that are excited about whales, and hello to Wyatt. That's really exciting. Um, all the way from Thailand. That is incredible. So, thank you so much for tuning in today for this Marine Mammal Monday. I'm seeing Koji Cat. Welcome back, joining from Santa Cruz. We have Marsha joining in from Alabama. Excellent. William from Wisconsin. Welcome. And Peter, I know that. Hi, Peter. Welcome to Marine Mammal Monday. Carrie, hello again. Tuning in from Concord. Kathy from Cambria. We've got Joey and Iris from Inverness in Marin County. Welcome. Manitow from Sonoma Coast. Oh my goodness, we have so many folks here today. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this Marine Mammal Monday all about whales in San Francisco Bay. And hello to Hannah from Paso Robles. Excellent. Oh my goodness. We have even more coming in. Hello, Paris. It's nice to see you virtually since I get to see you often around the center as well. We have R from Mill Valley, Andrew from Wedwood City. Oh my goodness. So many folks. Thank you all so much for coming today. We even have Joy coming in from Maui, Hawaii. So thank you so much for tuning in, for telling me where you're coming in from. It really makes my day to get to see that folks are coming from all over the place. It just warms my heart. So thank you all so much for coming to our Marine Mammal Monday today. And as we're talking all about specifically San Francisco and the whales that we have in them. So I'll go ahead and get us started here. But for those of you that this might be your first Marine Mammal Monday, or maybe you're not as familiar with Marine Mammal Monday, I always love getting to start off by just talking a little bit about where we're tuning in from and how special this place is. So I'm going to start us off by introducing myself. Hello, my name is Crystal Krusik. I'm the Public Programs Coordinator here at the Marine Mammal Center where I'm tuning in from today. I also have Holly, who's tuning in also from the Marine Mammal Center, who's our conservation, education, and retail associate. So you'll often see her working all sorts of different roles here around the center as she straddles education and retail. And then in the comment box today, we have Katie, who's our digital media manager. And Katie is such a hero to us because anything that we may not answer on the live, Katie does an excellent job making sure that we respond to at a later date. So be on the lookout in those comments. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to put them in the chat. Now, as we get started with the day, I do just want to say hello from the Marine Mammal Center. Now, the Marine Mammal Center is a global leader in marine mammal health, science, and conservation, and is the largest marine mammal hospital in the entire world. Now, we're able to accomplish this with a small but mighty staff of about 100 individuals, but really the backbone of our whole organization is that we run on incredibly dedicated volunteers. So, thank you to every volunteer that might be tuning in today. It seems like we've got a good group of you. And all of those volunteers that make up about 1,300 individuals make the work that we do here possible. Now, since we are, a nonprofit, that volunteer helps extra, but we also cover a really large range. So we are covering the coast of California, about 600 miles of it. So from Mendocino County up in the north, all the way down to San Luis Obispo in the south. And we also have extended our reach across the water, all the way over to Hawaii, where we have a secondary hospital location called Ke Kaiola, meaning the healing sea, where we work exclusively with the highly endangered Hawaiian monk seal. So that's just a little bit about who we are. But now I want to tell you how we are. So we are really driven here by a mission to advance global ocean conservation. Now, here at the Marine Mammal Center, we are accomplishing this through our rescue, our rehabilitation, the research, and release of these patients. And believe it or not, all of this starts with you. Every single rescue that happens, that comes in through our doors or happens out on those beaches, is thanks to folks just like you letting us know when you see a sick or injured marine mammal. We have a 24-hour hotline that jumpstarts those rescues listed here on the screen. That's going to be 415-289 SEAL here stateside. And that is what starts out our rescue. Now, once you give that number a call and let us know where that animal is in need, when we do that rescue, it might look like that top left hand corner photo there, where you can see some of our trained volunteers using a variety of different tools like boards or nets in order to get those sick and injured marine mammals over to our hospital safely. Now, once on site, we can do basically anything you can do at a human hospital. And so I love this top right photograph because there is actually a photo of a sea otter getting an ultrasound. And that's only one example of the many different kinds of diagnostics and procedures that we're able to perform here on site. Now, while we have these animals in our care, our goal is definitely to learn from each and every one of them that comes through our doors. And we're accomplishing this through the research. So, in that bottom left hand side, you're seeing a picture of Carlos doing some of our diagnostic work here in the clinical lab, where we're really looking at what's bringing these animals into our care, needing to come to a hospital in the first place, so that we can innovate solutions to those issues that they're facing out in the wild. And then our ultimate goal is in that bottom right hand photo there. And that's a picture of some harbor seals getting released, those nice, happy, plump harbor seals ready for their second chance at life. And then there's what Holly and I get to do. An equally important part of our mission is the educational component. So, getting to share our story with others, get folks just like you on board with our mission here. If you're looking for some educational things to do, definitely check out our website, marinemammalcenter.org. There are plenty of broadcasts similar to this one that are saved on the website where you can find them. But we also have lots of activities, other virtual programs, and even curriculum available on site. So no matter where you are in the world or beyond, you can find something to connect you here to the Marine Mammal Center. Now, currently on site today, we have about 33 patients in our care. So we are at a spot right now where we've got about 19 California sea lions. We have one northern elephant seal. We've got about 7 northern fur seals and 6 Hawaiian monk seals, again in our Hawaii location as well. So making a total of about 33 patients in our care just today. Now, while that's all about the Marine Mammal Center, we are here to talk even beyond our doors here. So, we are here to explore this Marine Mammal Monday all about whales here in San Francisco Bay. So, to get us started, I wanted to let you know kind of who you might be able to see while you are out potentially looking for some of these whales. Now, this screen now has a lot of different colors on it that can look pretty overwhelming. But basically, what you've got is you've got the months of the year up at the top and the species up on the left hand side. And that can tell you on this chart when and how you might see them. So, as an example, there's blue that says that the animals are going to be present during that month. The red is going to be a peak season, so an extra good time to go out and look for them. And then we do also have another thing that says that has like a picture of a little boat. And that's going to let you know that the best way to see that particular species is going to be by boat rather than by the seashore. Now, you can see lots of our species actually by the seashore, but there's some great places that you can go whale watching by boat as well. And here in November, kind of looking mostly towards the right of this graphic, you can see that there's California sea lions, that you can see harbor seals, but also things like humpback whales, potentially an orca, and some dolphins and porpoises as well. Now, the whales that we're going to highlight today, sort of the heroes of our story here in San Francisco Bay, are going to be whales like gray whales, the harbor porpoise, the humpback whale, the blue whale, and the bottlenose dolphin. So, we're going to get into the who's who of whales in the bay. But to talk a little bit about that, I would like to introduce you to this lovely graphic of all whales. Now, this whales of the world shows us that there's two kinds of whales. There's the whales that are looking into the center from the left, are going to be our baleen whales. And our whales that are looking into the center from the right are all of the toothed whales. Now, you may be a little bit more curious about that, but this is generally what those two look like. So we have the whales again with baleen on the left hand side, and an example of a toothed whale like a dolphin on the right hand side. And we get to talk about both of those different kinds of whales as we explore the whales of San Francisco Bay today. But we are going to start out with the baleen whales.
Hello. And that's where I come in. I'm going to chat with you guys about the baleen whales that we see in San Francisco Bay. So, first, what is one of the main differences between baleen whales and toothed whales? Well, one that might not be super intuitive is that baleen whales have two blowholes, while the toothed whales only have one. And then the more obvious difference is that baleen whales have that super long baleen structure in their mouth. So that baleen is like toothbrush bristles, and it's made of keratin, like our fingernails, and they will use this baleen to sieve water out of their mouth after they've just taken a big gulp full of water and all of their food items. And as that water sieves out, all of the tiny little food particles that they're hoping to eat gets caught on those bristles, and then they can slurp it all up with their tongue and have themselves a nice snack. So, one of the largest baleen whales, and actually the largest whale in the world, is the blue whale. So they are 100 feet long. They weigh about 400,000 pounds. That's about 20 times heavier than some dinosaurs. And so they are believed to be the largest animal that ever lived. And yet, as baleen whales, they have eaten some of the smallest animals in the world. It takes a lot of effort for blue whales to go and catch food. So, part of that effort is going to be in their migrations. Like many whales, blue whales make long migrations from food rich polar regions to warmer waters where they are breeding. And this migration for blue whales specifically can be around 4,000 miles in length. Now, to kind of add on to how large these whales are, let's talk about some of their dimensions, like their heart. It's the size of a car. It can weigh about 400 pounds, and when the heart is beating, you can actually hear it from almost 2 miles away by sonar. So, very loud, very big hearts in these very large animals. And then on top of that, their tongue is ginormous. So, this is the tongue that they're using to scrape all of those micro animals off of the baleen. And so, this tongue can weigh about 4 tons, and that's about as much as an elephant. And when we talk about such a large animal, sometimes it's hard to conceptualize or visualize just how large these animals are. So we do have the blue whale posted up next to a basketball court. So they are about the length of one. And then in terms of weight, again, they are 400,000 pounds. So that is equivalent to about 40 elephants. And as far as calves go, those calves are believed to be the largest babies in the world. They are born at 20 feet, 25 feet long, and weigh about 6,000 pounds. So, very, very large animals, and they need a lot of food to sustain themselves. So, a single adult eats about 4 tons of krill a day. If you were to equate that to something that we are more familiar with, hamburgers, that's about 20,000 hamburgers. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't anticipate eating 20,000 hamburgers, maybe even in my entire lifetime. So, very, very high calorie intake for these animals. But at the same time, these animals can be a little selective. So, here is drone footage of a blue whale eating krill, and they may selectively choose larger patches of krill because they have to get up to speed to do a big lunge feeding, opening up their wide mouth, which then slows them down. So it's a lot of energy investment for them to go and feed. They want to pick the biggest, largest group of krill. And then on top of all of that, with the largest animals, we have the largest babies. So those blue whale calves, they are eating too. They gain about 8 pounds per hour drinking their mother's milk for the first year of life. That's about 200 pounds a day that these smaller animals relative to their mother are gaining. And we do have this fun little graphic on the right. And if you are familiar with the film Mean Girls, the quote here is from that movie. Now, moving on to a whale that we do see more frequently in the bay is the humpback whale. Tons of humpback whale sightings in the San Francisco Bay Area. And to talk about these animals, we do have a couple of really common ways that we recognize them. And one of them is their famous song. So we'll play that for you now. That definitely always reminds me of Dory from Finding Nemo. But you can find these humpback whales in pretty much all of our oceans. So all of their different range is outlined in blue on this map, which is basically all of our oceans. And these animals actually follow very distinct migration paths. So very similar to blue whales and that they migrate from colder polar waters where they get food to warmer waters for their calving and breeding grounds. But also, they have 14 distinct populations that follow each of their own migratory paths. So, much more distinct than some of the blue whale groups. And some interesting ways that these animals feed. They do have a handful of methods, but this one's a very unique one that I'd like to share. It's the bubble net method. So, this feeding method is where they spin in a spiral under the water, blowing bubbles from their blowhole. And in that effort, they are creating a bubble net, which corrals all of the tiny animals that they hope to consume to the center and up to the top of the water. And then they just gulp the fish and other small animals that they've corralled. And then they push that extra water that they don't mean to swallow out of their baleen. So, this bubble net feeding is pretty unique. And I thought that this visual is just, I mean, it's so pretty just to even watch them feed beautiful in the water, under the water. And so, another common marine mammal whale that we see in the San Francisco Bay Area is our gray whales. So, the gray whale is a popular one along our coastline, and you can find them more along the North Pacific oceans, and they tend to stay a little more to the coastlines. So, that's why we tend to see them a lot around our bay, a lot around the California coast. And some fun ways to identify these animals when they're out in the water and while you're out whale watching is the length of the animal. They are 49-ish feet long. They have gray mottled skin, which is why they're called the gray whale. They have knuckles rather than a fin, a dorsal fin on their back. So we kind of call them knuckles because they look like the knuckles on our hand. and then a wide fluke with a very deep notch. So when these animals are fluking in the water, you can identify them just on their tail alone. And last but not least, their blow. The shape of their blow is actually heart shaped. So those are some really easy identifiers for this species. And again, like all of our whale species, they are big migrators, but they happen to have the longest single migration of any mammal. Their migration can go over 11,000 miles round trip, sometimes as long as 14,000. And so they pass by California. They'll head south to breed between December and February. That's the best time to see them along our coastline. And when they are heading back to their nice cold feeding grounds in February and May, they are bringing their calves with them that may weigh more than 1,000 pounds at birth. And so, with this migration pattern, it's kind of interesting because a lot of the gray whales are shifting in their migratory pattern. So, their normal feeding ground has been moved further north into Alaska. And that's happened around since 1990. And so this not only means a further trip to the birthing grounds in Baja California, but also a further trip back up to their feeding grounds. And so with this, we do see some really unique adaptations for how these animals kind of get an extra snack on this longer migration route on their way back to the feeding grounds. An interesting group I wanted to talk about was the sounders. You can find them in the North Puget Sound. They break off from their normal migration route and head on over to this more shallow region to specifically feed on ghost shrimp. And while it's very abnormal for gray whales to take pit stops and take some feeding time along their migration route, this unique group will actually spend 2 to 3 months each spring in this area catching food. So the first individuals were sighted in the early 1990s, and these individuals are tracked today still by the Cascadia Research Collective. The image on the left kind of highlights the feeding evidence that we see of these animals. That's how we know they're there aside from tracking, and that's highlighted in gray. So you can see just how much feeding evidence there is. And so when I say evidence, we want to chat about kind of how these animals leave their mark. They are bottom feeders. So they're one of the only baleen whales that eat from the bottom of the ocean. And the way that they feed is very unique as well. They like to scrape the side of their head against the sediment, the soft silts. They'll pick up all that mud, excuse me, that mud and water, and all of the animals that have burrowed underneath, such as the ghost shrimp. And then they will sieve out all of that sediment and mud and water and keep all that nice, healthy amphipods and crustaceans, giving themselves a nice little snack. So, in the feeding season, these gray whales can eat about 1.3 tons of food per day. And so that's a lot of food, especially when you're considering such tiny, tiny animals as this ghost shrimp here in the right hand side. And of course, we have this beautiful photo of a gray whale showing off their scraping bottom feeding method of eating.
Now, even though we really could talk about baleen whales just about all day long, there are also toothed whales and dolphins in the San Francisco Bay. So, one thing that makes them extra special is that these toothed whales and dolphins can echolocate while they're hunting. So, that's what you're seeing here in this visual is that as this dolphin is creating sound, a little squeaky sound that you might associate with dolphins, it's actually coming from the nasal sacs here highlighted in dark blue. That sound passes through that here highlighted in green organ called a melon. And this nice fatty organ is actually helping them out with that echolocation. As it passes through that, it'll go out and hit different objects, maybe something like the fish example that you can see here. And as it bounces back, it'll go to the fatty cavity in their lower jawbone. And from there, they're able to decipher things like size, shape, and distance as they're receiving these different sound signals back. So these toothed whales and dolphins may not be bottom feeding scrapers like the gray whale or bubble netters like the humpback, but they have incredible echolocation that allows them to hunt in really unique ways in the ocean. Now, since we do have both porpoises and dolphins that we see in the San Francisco Bay, I did want to take just a minute for us to talk about the difference between them. So, porpoises and dolphins look very, very similar, so they can be pretty easy to mix up. But there's a couple of distinct features to keep in mind. So, porpoises up at the top are going to look usually like a smaller dolphin and just a little bit more blunted. So, you'll see they have a very, very short, blunt beak. Their dorsal fin on top kind of looks a little bit more like a Hershey's kiss, and they're just kind of in general a little smaller. In fact, even their teeth are blunted. You can see at the bottom right hand of this photo here shows an example of what their teeth look like. And the paddle shaped, like spade shaped one, that's going to be of a porpoise. So even their teeth are blunted in comparison. Whereas when you look at the dolphin, everything is just a little bit bigger and a little bit pointier. So you can see that very, very pointy dorsal fin up on top. You can see that very long beak there is incredibly pointy, and they even have cone like pointed teeth as well. Now, one more thing I did want to touch on because a great question came in through the chat kind of a while ago, so I hope you're still remembering. But Pam asked if the peak season is when these animals are mating. So, when we're seeing them through in that peak season, if that's when they're mating. Now, as we saw with Holly's examples of those migration patterns. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Those migratory patterns, you could see that they are eating and feeding up usually at the poles or down at the poles, and they're usually going to be mating closer to the equator where the water is warmest. So it's not exactly when they're mating that we'll see them, but it's on their way to either feeding or mating that you'll see them. So we tend to see that peak season is when the majority of that population is moving, and then we'll always tend to see a couple of stragglers on either end. So that's where you might see some of that blue in that graph. Excellent question. Now, I did want to dive into the harbor porpoise because harbor porpoise are incredibly interesting animals, I think. They're an animal that has a very unique and special history specific to the San Francisco Bay. So while harbor porpoises can be kind of seen all along Alaska, New England, the Southeast, and the West Coast here, they're again kind of like the smaller cousins of the dolphins. They get to about 3 to 5 feet long. They'll be doing things like eating small fish, think herring or anchovies. And what's really interesting is that they were incredibly common until the 1930s. So I do have return of the harbor porpoises listed here because they have an interesting story where they left for about 65 years from our harbor. Now, in 1930, that was when they started to disappear, and a lot of that is actually due to World War II. Not only were there differences for our humans and the things that we did, but also for the wildlife. So here you can see a photo of actually a very large metal net that went through. So the Navy put a 7-mile metal net that actually blocked off our harbor here in San Francisco Bay, blocked off the entire bay. And that was actually to keep out things like enemy submarines. So it could have been an incredibly useful tool to keep people safe. But the other thing that it kept out was actually the harbor porpoise. Now, on top of that, we also had a lot of issues at the time when it came to water quality. So there was lots of sewage in the water, and honestly, the beaches were used more like dumping grounds. So it wasn't until a group called Save the Bay, which is a nonprofit that still exists and is still incredible, worked together in the community, bringing together like minded folks in order to make change where we could clean up our oceans, clean up our waterways, clean up the bay, and also the surrounding area so that humans could access this in a safe way. So, after all of that, with conservation efforts, including the Clean Water Act, and folks coming together to really fight for the quality of the water, the care of these marine mammals, we have now seen hundreds of these harbor porpoises return after that 65-year absence. And again, this is going to be thanks to a lot of those efforts that people put in place. Now, when it comes to eating, just like I'd mentioned earlier, a lot of them, they're big in echolocation. But if you want to see a harbor porpoise, a great tip is if you go and are able to walk along the Golden Gate Bridge during high tide and you look down, you're pretty likely to get to see a harbor porpoise. Now I'd like to touch a little bit on the bottlenose dolphin. Now, bottlenose dolphins are pretty incredible animals too. You can see they have a really large range, and they get to about 300 to about 1,400 pounds, anywhere from about 6 to 13 feet. And they have some pretty unique strategies when it comes to feeding and eating. Now, this is one that I really, really like. Dolphins in general are incredibly smart creatures that are able to problem solve in ways that we couldn't imagine for most things. Now, what you're seeing here is one of my favorite examples of a collaborative feeding technique. So, working together, these dolphins, they're actually using their tails, their flukes, and they're smacking it against the sea floor to kick up mud. Now, as they're kicking up that mud, it's creating a net very similar to the way that we saw the humpbacks using bubbles to create that fishing net. And with that, the fish have kind of no choice than to jump up out of the water looking for a way out into their very happy waiting mouths that you can see here. Now, when it comes to the Marine Mammal Center and dolphins, we have a pretty amazing history with them. Now, we've been able to work with both porpoises and dolphins. You can see the porpoise pictures on the right hand side and some dolphin pictures on the left hand side. Now, these are some pretty historical photos. These are not where we're putting our efforts right now, but some pretty fun ways that we've evolved as a center. So, one of our past patients that I like to get to share about is Baker D. Now, Baker D was a bottlenose dolphin as a juvenile male, was rescued in 2004 from Baker Beach in San Francisco, and came in really malnourished and really dehydrated, and also had a small puncture wound on his snout there. Now, the good news is Baker T was actually released after just 2 months of care. He was brought here on site to our hospital, where he was initially so weak that he couldn't even swim. And we needed to use pool noodles in order to support his weight in the water and make sure that he can continue to breathe out of his blowhole. Now, as he was taking those 2 months to get better, this is only thanks to the many antibiotics, the medications that were used to stabilize his heart, and weeks of round the clock care, thanks to our volunteers and our veterinary staff that were able to make sure that he could be okay. Now, when he was released, because this is such an odd patient for us, he was outfitted with a satellite tag so that we could track where he was going and what he was doing after he was put back out for his second chance at life in the ocean. Now, what was really funny about Baker D is we actually released him in Monterey, pretty close to a pod of dolphins. And he pretty immediately left that pod of dolphins and decided that he was destined for warmer waters. He went down to Southern California and remained with a different pod of dolphins in the Channel Islands. So I always think that one's kind of funny because you never know what will happen with our patients. Now, while that is a very unusual story because we don't often work with bottlenose dolphins here in the hospital, we do still work with all of the whales and dolphins that we've mentioned so far. Any of those calls that we get again to that 24-hour hotline can help us understand who's out and in need in the ocean. So we've really started to focus our cetacean, our whale and dolphin work into more of a research team here. So here's a picture of some folks on that research team. You can see Bill Keener on the right hand side and Tim Markowitz on the left hand side. And these folks are out there amongst the rest of the team to really try and learn a little bit more about whales and dolphins in the San Francisco Bay. So, other than just trying to figure out where they are, we want to know when they're coming to the bay, what their population is like, what their behavior is like, and if we're able to see things like calving success as well. Now, one thing that's pretty fun is we're also working with the Cascadia Research Institute that was mentioned earlier about the sounders, those gray whales. They also help us here to track humpbacks here in San Francisco Bay. Now, we do also have a whale entanglement response and prevention team as well, that's pictured here. And this is a team that partners with NOAA and fisheries to think about the ways that our fishing practices might entangle whales. If there are ghost nets that are left by other groups, how we can help resolve that. But on top of that, this is also a team that goes out to disentangle whales that might be stuck in some of this discarded old fishing gear or these ghost fishing nets that are left on their own. Now, even though it looks like there's just a couple of folks on a boat and like anybody could do this, these folks are highly trained in order to keep themselves and this whale safe. So, this involves a lot of pre planning into thinking about what kind of entanglement they have. Here, you'll see that bright orange buoy keeping it afloat, and then all of the trailing netting underneath it. But they're thinking a lot about what they're entangled in, how they've become entangled in it, which places to cut, and also how to keep themselves safe. This is not a safe or easy thing to do. But to talk a little bit more about it, I've got this short video to talk all about our work with entangled whales.
Pretty bad. Almost there. Come up on us to follow the whale. The whale is now free.
Well, I don't know about you all, but every time I see something like this, my heart just soars. That moment where they say the whale is free just really hits me. Um, Now, we've not only been working on their entanglement, but also learning a little bit more about where they are.
So, one of the many, many ways that you can help whales just coming out on a whale watching tour, or if you're located along the coast, is by reporting the whales that you see. So, by reporting whales, you can get involved in our research. We can share this research to then better understand where whales go. And so, on the left hand side of the screen, you have the Marine Mammal Center's reporting process on whales, and you just go to kind of the typical reporting process. So not only can you report pinnipeds like seals and sea lions, but whales as well. And if you see on this screen, we do have some help in allowing you to identify what whale you've seen on the right hand side with the different dorsal fins you might have seen on the animal. And then on the left hand side, it does ask for more details on how that sighting went. And then for that's for within the San Francisco Bay. And then for broader reports, there is always Happy Whale. And Happy Whale is a great website. You can upload photos with locations of whales that you've seen, whether again on whale watching tours or if you're just out along the coastline. And by submitting photos to either us or Happy Whale, you are becoming a community scientist. And at Happy Whale, they can compare the photos that you've taken and compare it to the catalogs that they have to identify the exact individual that that whale might be.
Now, not only are we really thinking about where these whales are and how we can track that, we've also really launched this brand new amazing system called Whale Safe. So, this is in collaboration with the Benioff Ocean Science Lab. And this is a way that we're able to stop some of these potential mortality events for whales. We know right now that whale ship collisions continue to be a leading cause of death for endangered whales. So, this system of Whale Safe helps actually to give people the right data insights to empower real decisions to save whales. Basically, what Whale Safe does is it creates like a school zone for whales. But in order to know where the whales are and how to communicate that to the people that might be traveling through our new whale school zone, we need to be able to get them all the information we can. So, this is an AI enabled acoustic monitoring system that uses big data models, these acoustic notes, and also records that are being kept by observers and community scientists to put it all together. And that's where this graphic comes in. You might be able to see some small numbers next to some of the things on the graphic. So if you look kind of in the center of the graphic, you'll see that little yellow buoy. That's number 1. That yellow buoy is going to be a passive acoustic monitoring system. And that's what's going to let us know who is going to be where and when they might be there. So we can hear some of these whales as they're coming through, either singing their songs or using that echolocation in order to find their food. Now, number 2, all the way on the left-hand side, that's going to be some of our trained observers and our community scientists that are able to directly sight the whales. Number 3, you can see kind of in the center, is a satellite system. And that's what I mean when I say big data models from earlier. We're able to use satellites to understand where whales are and especially where we're seeing their food as an indicator for where whales might go. Now, these 3 different inputs are going into the number 4 that you can see that they're all pointing to on the upper right-hand corner there. And what that's doing is it's compiling all of this different information and it's creating a whale presence rating. And this whale presence rating gets directly given to the captains of these large vessels, these shipping or these fishing vessels that might be here in San Francisco Bay, and gives them all of the data that they might need in order to know when to slow down. We know right now that just being a little slower around whales is actually the most effective measure we can take to reducing those whale ship collisions. So, Whale Safe is our new thing. It's really exciting, and you can always find out more about this on our website.
As far as more ways that you can help, because we can't all be watching whales all the time, I would love to, but unfortunately, what I do know is that people are part of the ocean feast as well. So, 3 billion people rely on seafood as their main source of protein. And unfortunately, 85% of our fisheries are caught at or above capacity right now. And the fish are disappearing. And this does have some long lasting effects on the animals in the ocean, and that includes whales. So, not only are people being infected by these declines in the fisheries, but whales. So, to better combat that, in addition to reporting to Happy Whale and to our personal sightings here for whale sightings, we can also choose sustainable seafood. And there are so many different ways that you can identify sustainable seafood when you're going out and ordering seafood or purchasing it in the grocery store. So feel free to use one or all of these methods in identifying sustainable seafood near you. But we have the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch Program, which evaluates different fisheries and offers the best, the good, or avoid choices for sustainable options in seafood. We also have the certified sustainable seafood checkmark through the Marine Stewardship Council, and that is on a lot of packaging in the grocery store. That will tell you it's nice and easy to identify a sustainable option while you're at the grocery store. And then another really great way to identify sustainable seafood near you is local catch. So, local catch provides information about what fisheries are local to you. And often, one of the most sustainable options that supports local industry can be found using local catch. So, again, by doing any of these actions, whether you're reporting whale sightings or choosing sustainable seafood, whatever you do to further whale conservation will also further humans as well as ocean conservation as a whole. So, thank you so much. And I hope you go out and enact some of these sustainable seafood choices in your life, as well as report whales in the future.
So, thank you all so much for tuning in to this Marine Mammal Monday all about whales in San Francisco Bay. I hope you learned something exciting and I hope you go have some sustainable seafood for dinner maybe tonight. If you enjoyed this presentation, please come to our next one. Our next Marine Mammal Monday Live will be happening December 5th. Same time, same place, but this one all about seal and sea lion superstars. Now, you're not going to want to miss this one live because this is actually our last live Marine Mammal Monday presentation. So, if you've been really enjoying these, I highly, highly suggest that you check out the ones that are recorded on our website. Or if you're able to come in person, we are now shifting to our Marine Science Sunday presentations, which happen every other Sunday, so twice a month. Um, here in person at the Marine Mammal Center. It's presentations very similar to this, where we talk about a variety of different ocean topics, and those are always posted on the website in advance. So we have through December on there now, but shortly coming will be all of the things for next year in 2023. I can't believe we're already so close. So, thank you, everyone, again for tuning in today for this Marine Mammal Monday. We hope to see you at the next one. Bye.